Hey everyone, how's it going? Matthew Kadish here, producer of the Salty Nerd podcast and sometimes novelist, here today with another episode of Bad Writing. And today I'm really excited to talk about one of the worst DC movies ever made, The Green Lantern starring Ryan Reynolds. And we've got a very special panel today to talk about this. We've got experts in the superhero field, and I'm going to introduce them all to you right now. So first of all, we have our special guest, Mr. Ethan Van Sciver, of Cyberfrog fame, but he also has a special connection to Green Lantern. Ethan, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about that?
I created Green Lantern back in 1959, and I regret it after seeing this movie. This is I wish I had somebody like Jack Kirby, who I could. Or actually, no, I wish I were Jack Kirby and I had a Stan Lee that I could shift the blame onto. No, he created. No, just kidding. I worked in 2004 through 2015, drawing Green Lantern for DC Comics.
Nice.
And creating a lot of the elements that were mishandled and abused in this movie. I was confronted by some people who worked on this movie early on and asked if I would like to work on this movie, doing some designs. And I said, yes. And then I told Jeff Johns, I said, Jeff, the Green Lantern movie guys came to me and asked me if I would like to work on the movie. And he said to me, that sucks. Nobody came to me. And I said, oh, and I said, well, in that case, I'll tell them, no, we're a team. And then Jeff was hired to be the chief creative officer of DC Comics, and he got to do the movie and I didn't. So anyway.
Oh, that's rough. Ethan, do you also want to tell everyone about Comicsgate and your involvement in that?
I would love to. Comicsgate is a movement of creators and fans and customers that are rebelling against cancel culture and the intrusion of partisan politics in the comic book industry, which I think a lot of people feel right now. A lot of people have vocally opposed. And it's an opportunity for independently creative people to join a network of customers, fans, creators to get comic books funded independently and away from where they could be tampered with and intruded upon by political activists, which is something that we've had trouble with. So that's what Comicsgate is. I'm a proud representative of it. I think it's great. I think it's the most feared at this point movement in the comic book industry and lied about movement in the comic book industry. But those who belong to it are having a great time. I certainly am. I've got a comic book called Cyberfrog that I have crowdfunded through Indiegogo and with the help of Comicsgate, and it has raised nearly $5 million to date. So a much better situation than I found myself in at DC Comics working on Green Lantern. So
that's fantastic. And the Comicsgate community is truly on the forefront of a lot of really good storytelling. So, kudos for being a part of that. All right. So now we're going to go to Charles Ekeke, who is the author of the Pantheon Saga. Charles, why don't you tell everyone who you are and where they can find out more about your books?
Hey there. My pen name, you can call me CC Ekeke. I'm the author of the Pantheon Saga superhero series and the Star Brigade space opera series. And you can find me at ccekeke.com, or you can find me on Amazon just by typing in my pen name. Or you can find me on Facebook and Twitter. If you want to talk comic books, want to talk books, want to talk bad fiction, and want to talk good stories, that's where you can find me.
Fantastic. And of course, last but not least, the USA Today best-selling author of the Full Metal Superhero Saga, Jeffrey H. Haskell. How you doing, buddy?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me again, Matthew. Appreciate it. I have two main superhero series, Full Metal Superhero and Superhero by Night. And Arsenal is my Full Metal Superhero is my creation based. It's funny, kind of a lot like Comicsgate, because I wrote it in 2016 when I just couldn't read comics anymore. They were just terrible. And I'd already given up on Marvel, and then DC just threw it all away. And I was like, I'm done with this, but I still wanted superheroes. And so I started writing my own superhero stories. and that culminated with Arsenal, which I released at the beginning of 2017. And I've got 9 books in that series, and you can find it everywhere books are sold. And the second series is Wraith, Superhero by Night, which is a little bit darker, a little bit grimmer, more Punisher meets Batman in the John Wick universe kind of thing. And you can also find that everywhere books are sold and audiobooks are sold.
Fantastic. All right, guys, let's get into the main bulk of this story. What did you all think of the Green Lantern movie? Let me just start by asking you all that. Ethan, let's start with you. What was your? I know you have a very emotional reaction to it, so I'd like to hear your general thoughts.
I still have not seen it all the way through. I think I've managed to get 45 minutes into it. The first time I had friends over, I knew it wasn't good. I knew it wasn't good when I saw the first trailer, and I saw Ryan Reynolds acting, going, and then like his costume appears in his apartment, and somebody goes, "Wow," and he goes, "Right," and I went, "This isn't
no."
It just looked like it was going to be silly. I thought Ryan Reynolds could have done the job with a better script. I thought he was fine. My opinion, which most people disagree with, is that I thought that Mark Strong was miscast as Sinestro. He certainly didn't look like my Sinestro. He was young and handsome. My Sinestro was a little bit more. My Sinestro is a little bit more older and evil. I would say he would look more like Grand Moff Tarkin than a handsome young man. That's the Sinestro that I was trying to put across in the comics. Anyway, I invited some friends over. One thing I do want to say, Jeff Johns lied to me. I was on a panel with him when he was working. He was all the way like working on the movie, doing edits. He had his laptop open. He's doing something Green Lantern style. He's showing me a little bit of stuff. He's showing me a picture of what Parallax was supposed to look like. He looked like my yellow fear cricket. You can still find that image on the internet now. I think the temporary design that was based on the comics. And I said, "How was the movie, Jeff? Is it good?" And he said, "Yeah." And that's when I knew Jeff would lie to me. Right then, I knew that Jeff would lie to me, because he looked at me and he said, "Yes." And I know now, with the benefit of hindsight, that is not true. Invited some friends over, rented it, got some wine, got thoroughly trashed, got 45 minutes into it, and then threw the Blu-ray right into the garbage. And I'm on the Blu-ray, and I threw it in the garbage. And then tried to watch it now that it's on Netflix. I got a little bit further into it. It is a horrible movie that destroyed everything that I built. And that's the nicest thing I can say about it. Thank you.
Jeffrey, what did you think of the Green Lantern film?
Well, I loved it. I thought it was the greatest single comic book movie of all time. Spider-Man Far From Home is really a fan. Oh, we're talking about Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that was terrible.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, my little attempt at humor there. No, when I watched it in theaters, I remember thinking in theaters watching this movie, and I love Mark Strong. He's been in a lot of really great stuff, and I agree with you completely. He was totally miscast as Sinestro. I felt like the filmmakers were like, "Oh, it's a secret. Nobody's ever going to guess that Sinestro, whose name rhymes with sinister, is really the villain." So and I'm watching this movie, and I'm like, well, one, Mark Strong is a better actor than everybody in that movie. So every time he was next to somebody else, it kind of looked bad. I did like Kelsey Grammer as Abin Sur. I thought that was kind of fun. Not that you could really tell it was Kelsey Grammer, but you could tell from his voice.
That wasn't Kelsey Grammer. That was Boba Fett. Kelsey Grammer.
That's right. That was actually.
I thought it was Kelsey Grammer.
Tamora, I forgot his last name. Tamora.
Oh, my bad. Well, then he was great.
Tomar Ray was Kelsey Grammer. Oh, okay. Yeah, Tomar Ray was the nicest thing in the movie. I really liked Tomar Ray. I thought he was really good when he first showed up, and he just, I'm jumping ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Overall impression of the movie. Sorry.
But it was awful. I was just watching it thinking, at the time we didn't have the semi-decent superhero shows that we've had in the past, like the first season of Arrow, and so I'm like watching it thinking, like, this is crap. I'm like, who signed off on this movie? This is Joel Schumacher put nipples on the batsuit level of crap. And I couldn't believe it got made. Sometimes I look at Hollywood, I'm like, how did everybody from the writer to the director to all the people in the studio sign off on this and say, this is a great idea? I have no idea.
Charles, what did you think of the movie?
I thought it sucked. Just to be honest, it was terrible. I watched it in the theater, and it was just hollow and rushed and bad CGI. And the problem that they had, and this is what the thing, one of the biggest problems is that Hal Jordan, no offense, he has no personality. He's boring. He's vanilla. He's plain bread. He's just a generic every hero. It's like if you took away the Green Lantern ring, you wouldn't know who the heck he was. It's like, okay, who are you? You're an everyman. Fine, whatever. That's why Ryan Reynolds pretty much had to play himself while he was like Green Lantern, because Hal Jordan just had that, his paper thin personality, and he's a flyboy, whatever. He's a pilot, but it was not a good movie. It just rushed too much in. The villain was bad. The villain was just this space blob. And it was just like, everything was too rushed. Like, in my opinion, hopefully I'm not, going too fast, but in my opinion, we should have teased at the core. We should never have seen the whole core already. That should have been the end of the movie. Like, oh, you kind of did thing. If they were going to do anything, they should have aped Kyle Rayner's story, where he was grounded for I think the first couple issues of his when they did the reboot. But instead, they kind of just did everything so quickly, and it's just like, yeah, they did everything so quickly, and it's just like that. Especially if you're starting, because from what I understand, Green Lantern was supposed to be the beginning of the DCEU. That was supposed to be the beginning. Because it did so badly, they had to kind of course correct and do Man of Steel. But they just didn't know what they're doing. And I think Ryan Reynolds, a lot of people give him crap for this movie, but he fought his hardest to try and keep certain things. Like the studio execs, they wanted to get rid of him having a ring. And even just something as simple as the oath. He fought for the oath because they wanted to get rid of the oath. They wanted to change it. And he said, no, the fans will crucify you if you change the oath.
That was the best part of the movie, was when he said the oath.
Yeah.
Well,
and when his eyes went green and he was just like in brightest day and darkest night, like robotically, that was cool. I have to admit, there are aspects of this movie that I really like, and I wanted to like it. Like, I went into it going, here's the problem with Green Lantern. The problem with Green Lantern is that it's such a big concept. Yeah, I mean, that's the overall big problem, CC, and that's what you were talking about a second ago. Guys, don't mute yourself when I'm unmute. Let's have a conversation.
My chair is squeaky.
I don't care. It's like, that'll make it interesting. I'm sorry. I've been doing this for a while. I really want to, intermingle with you guys. But the problem is that Green Lantern is such an enormous concept that it can only be fed to a credulous audience one bite at a time. And Cece's right. Like, okay, so what do we have to believe? First of all, what is Hal Jordan's personality? Okay, well, he is an arrogant flyboy who gets the ladies. He's a guy who takes risks, but he's not reckless. And the Hal Jordan in this was a reckless asshole. He's driving. He almost crashes and kills it. He's irresponsible. That's not Hal Jordan. He's not irresponsible. He's very responsible, but he will take chances. And that's what, that's the thing. He's like, I know what I'm doing. I know it looks like I don't know what I'm doing, but I know what I'm doing. I can get into an alien spacecraft and figure it out and pilot it. I mean, in a short period of time. That's his skill set. So he does have, you're right, CC, that he's not Peter Parker. No. You know what I mean? Like, we know who Peter Parker is. Who is Hal Jordan? We've got to kind of decide that. But we've got to kind of, pull his personality from the good aspects, the heroic qualities that make him worthy of wearing the ring in the first place.
The hard traveling heroes.
Well,
yeah.
Here's the thing. Why would the ring choose a guy who was sitting there? What was he doing, like, in his car in the opening scene, like recklessly driving, irresponsible? The ring chooses one person in every sector, and there are 3,600 sectors in a universe, in the entire universe. So, I mean, you really have to be a uniquely special person, and thus I expect Hal Jordan to be an extraordinary human being. He needs to be. But
I kind of disagree with you, Charles, about about him not having a personality, because if you go back to the original comic, now I grew up in the 70s and 80s reading Green Lantern and Justice League and Justice League of America and Legion of Superheroes and all those guys. And while I'm not like Green Lantern is not my favorite hero, I like Green Lantern, like I like all the Justice League people, except for Green Arrow. And if you look at him, he lost his ability to fly because he decked his senior officer over, I forget over what, but over something like a matter of principle. And that cost him his wings. Now, her heroes make choices and sacrifice the things in their life that they want for the things that they have to do. That would have been a fantastic way to introduce that character. Instead of I blew up a $75 million plane just to show you that I was better.
That actually would have been great. Is that maybe he would have decked him for like, hey, this is dangerous. You guys are taking shortcuts.
Like this is Space Shuttle Challenger. Like there's something wrong. This plane can't take off. We've got money invested in this. It's got to take off.
And then something happens. And then something happens. That's why he's at the bar. That's when he sees it. He's at his lowest because he lost friends because of that mistake that was made. And then
we're all rewriting them.
You can just workshop right now.
I don't want to.
And you know what, Jeff? And sorry. I'm not as familiar with. And that's the thing. I'm not as familiar with his origins as like Jeff was, just because like I only knew him when he was already Green Lantern, and then when he got, he became a bad guy, which got retconned, which was dumb, but whatever. So probably better than me in terms.
I hated that they made him a bad guy.
Yeah,
so, I hated that they made him a bad guy.
Before we get,
I was really glad. Parallax.
Before we get into the details of this, I just want to set the stage that there was a lot of studio interference with this movie. Originally, Martin Campbell wasn't going to be the director. It was Greg Berlanti, the guy who went on to do all the CW, DC shows.
Yes.
And he had a lot of hand in the making of the script. And when Martin Campbell came on to direct, he wanted Bradley Cooper to be Hal Jordan. And the studio came in and cast Ryan Reynolds without his approval, without Martin Campbell's approval. And so
they're the
Ryan,
same person.
Actually, they're different.
Hold on. But because of this, Martin Campbell and Ryan Reynolds did not get along during the making of this movie, and so I think that kind of translated into the film. Now, Charles, I know you know a lot of this behind the scenes stuff, so why don't you fill us in on some of this?
So I completely forgot about that, but that's true. You reminded me of that. But there was probably, I forgot how many writers there were on the script.
There were like 4.
There was like 4 different writers in the script. I think the studio, basically all the stuff that happened during Zack Snyder's tenure during the DCEU, they hadn't learned their lesson from Green Lantern. It just continued. I think Chris Nolan was kind of a buffer with Man of Steel. And then after he kind of was like, okay, peace out, I'm going to do my, Interstellar, Inception, Tenet type movies. That's when you really started to see the studio interference. But the thing is, the mistake that they made is that I feel that DCEU, they really wanted to ape Marvel. Because Marvel didn't have access to a lot of their more known characters, that's why they had to use Iron Man as that kind of their entryway. And it was a really smart entryway because Iron Man was much more grounded in reality than some of their other people, like Thor, definitely like Thor, or some of the space cosmic stuff that they're doing now. But they went with like probably one of the most space cosmic characters this side of Martian Manhunter as their entryway into the DCEU. And I'm just like, well, that was dumb. I mean, I can understand why they didn't want to go the Batman route, because I think at the time, The Dark Knight Rises hadn't
had a Batman
yet.
movie. No, we just had it.
Yeah. Well, no. This was 2011. So Dark Knight Rises hadn't come out yet. Dark Knight Rises came out in 2012.
Oh, okay.
So, and Chris Nolan was adamant saying, like, I'm not part of any universe. This Batman is the only hero in his universe. So
I think they could have been fine with Green Lantern. I think Green Lantern was a fine entry point. The problem is the writing.
How they did it, though. It was how they did it and what they rushed into with it, where it's like, and I think, Ethan, you're absolutely right, where it's just like, you have a credulous audience. People weren't as open. This was a year before the Avengers movie, where, hey, space aliens are invading Earth. So it's like, you have to breadcrumb this stuff out, especially when it comes to a character that's more, if you want to get more of the masses. I think the masses are more on board with this now, especially after the Marvel, what they've been able to do. I mean, they made a space ant and a raccoon marketable characters. So I think that before that, though, you had to breadcrumb this out, because this is a guy who has a magic ring that he willpowers and it makes green objects.
That's
so
enough.
It's like, that's enough right
That's
there.
all
Exactly.
you need.
Exactly.
And they used it to do punching bags and Lego cars
and trains on Hot Wheels tracks. Ethan, what were some of the things that you contributed to the comic that you feel were very mishandled in the translation to the big screen?
Boy, I'll tell you. One thing that was actually improved upon was the origin sequence, where Martin Campbell. What am I talking about? Hal Jordan's father, Martin Jordan, dies in the plane explosion. I loved. See, I had to draw it the way Jeff described it originally. Young Hal's just holding his dad's leather coat, his bomber jacket, and the plane explodes like right in front of him. But there's this great scene where, look, the plane lands. He almost ejects. He almost gets out. The young Hal Jordan's running towards the plane when it explodes. It was just a lot more action. And I wish I had drawn it that way. When I saw it, I said, wow, I wish we'd actually put that in the comic book that way, rather than having Hal just be sort of a witness to this. He did try to participate. What did I think was mishandled? Gee, I mean, it's hard to say. I guess so much of it. The thing that struck me the most is that the film really had contempt for the source material, and the characters in the movie let you know that at all points. There were all these moments where Hal Jordan would say, "Can you believe this, folks? This is stupid, isn't it?" That was the overall tone of the movie. Like, you get a magic land, you see an alien land, he gives you a ring, and you're cracking jokes. This is something that would utterly confound any normal person. It's like, okay, so there is life out there. We didn't know that before.
To be in awe of it, and not to be
be in awe, to get a lantern and then to go Shazam, and all this bullshit. Like, it's
that's
funny.
later.
You're a clown. I mean, at that point, like, okay, so we're laughing at this
they
now. The audience is rolling their eyes.
And that was the problem. This is the thing that's mind blowing at this point, is that I think it's because they still had that mindset of contempt for comic books. This was a year before Avengers, when it made like $1.8 billion. So after that, then they're just like, oh, wait, maybe we should take this seriously. But still, they had that mindset. And that had been the mindset, with the exception of a few pre-MCU, that had been the mindset of so many different studios when it came to superhero movies. And it's sad that Warner Brothers had that, because they had access to a comic book division in their studio, which is
I remember listening to an interview with Jeff Johns, Danny S. Glover, and Glover, the guy, one of the writers, Goyer.
Goyer. Oh, I thought you meant
David Goyer.
David Goyer, yeah, and a couple other people, and they were talking about what they wanted to do for Justice League, and the subject of Martian Manhunter came up. And I don't remember if it was Goyer or Johns, but
it was Goyer.
It was a Goyer, said, well, we couldn't do that. He'd have to be some sort of amoeba from Mars now, because he's just too stupid to do. And I'm
Goyer
like,
you gotta have, but I mean, that's utter contempt. You should not be writing superhero stuff. Like, I did a whole tirade about Superman, Man of Steel, where I really felt that movie was dark and ugly, and the Superman that we all knew was trustworthy and loving and compassionate, and he was just somebody that you trust. You see Superman, things are going to be okay. And one of the big failings of the DCEU is that I'm afraid of that Superman. He is out of control.
Yes.
He's dangerous. He's going to shoot his eye beams and blow up police cars. And I don't trust him. And that is a massive failing. And I was just like, you got to believe in this stuff if you're going to make movies of it. You cannot reject the mythology. If you're going to make a movie about Santa Claus, you can't just sit there and go, how could a guy go around the world? And you can't question it. You have to buy into it and do the movie about Santa Claus. All of that stuff needs to be convincing. You don't have to fact check everything in the world. But I mean, one of the things that's so awful about the Green Lantern movie is how ugly Oa is. It is a dark and ugly hellhole. It looks like Mordor. It looks like the orcs should be down there. And the thing about this is that it's the center of the universe. Think about this place where these dwarves from space, blue midgets, in a place called Oa, which is in no way a ripoff of Oz, OA versus OZ, the Emerald City.
And it's a living planet. That's another thing. It's a living planet.
That's Mogo. That's Mogo, not Oa.
Okay, wrong,
Mogo is a
sorry.
Green Lantern in and of himself. Oa is a planet.
Right.
It's the center of the universe. And it should be a place of light because it's a place of truth and justice. It's a place of liberty. It's a place of... We are now an intergalactic police force that is seeking to make the universe a better place. Would you call the universe a place? But that's our mission. Why is it so goddamn ugly? Why is it so scary? And that's the thing. It's so scary and so ugly, and I don't want to be there.
And you know what, Ethan, you hit a nail. Just going back to what you said, we'll get back to Green Lantern, but what you said about Superman, the best Superman movie that we've seen outside of, the one in 78 is Captain America Winter Soldier. It's because that is how you do a character that's a little more static, like a Superman, is that the world kind of like what he said in Civil War, the world might be telling you to move, but no, you tell them, no, you move. Mm-hmm. And yes, I can understand that there's distrust initially for this solar space god who can fire beams out of his eyes. But it's just like, it's because of his compassion. It's because of his humanity. That's when people come around to him, because of what he can do, because of what he's doing for people, because of what he portrays, the best of humanity. But going back to Green Lantern, yes, I think that they just threw too much at everyone at once. And it's sad because the problem with studios is when they do something like Green Lantern, they use that, they'll kind of crap the bed with it, and then they'll throw everything in the kitchen sink. They'll mangle the mythology, and they'll take the best part. Maybe there'll be odd parts of brilliance, but then they'll be like, see, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. And they'll use that as an excuse to not make it happen. And it's sad because that one door that kind of opens, maybe you get your foot in the door and then it closes because they basically screw things up, like a Daredevil. Let
me show you what the movie should have been more like, because the problem with the DCEU from the beginning has been somebody doesn't like superheroes over at Warner Brothers. Somebody actually hates superheroes over at Warner Brothers. And they want them all to be evil and dark and terrible. And I think this will work. Is this working? Can you guys see this?
Oh, nice.
This is what this movie should have been. Yes. You know what I mean? This is the tone that the movie should have evoked. And it didn't. And none of the DC movies do. Ethan, you hit on something that just totally made sense to me. Because I never believed for a second Batman and Batman versus Superman.
Like Green Lantern Rebirth #6 cover with that.
I'm not sure. I just
wipe on my work. All right, sorry. That's why my face looked like I was sucking lemons for a minute there. I was like,
anyway. You're absolutely right, Jeff. Yeah,
I never believed Batman's whole we've got to kill Superman because he might turn on humanity. Because it's Superman. But you just said it. You never trusted Superman, and they wrote him never trusting him, but never giving us a reason not to trust him. And so
Jeff.
Yeah. Sorry.
Before we went live, you were showing me one of Ethan's Batman. Panels.
Yeah.
And you had such a great take on that. Can you share that with?
Sure. I mean, that's a whole other rant I have about Batman. Because
and while you're calling that up, I just want to call up a few super chats here. So we got J Bomba fan said, I just got here. Who's this pasty clown? My name's Matt Kadish. So this is my live stream. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for jumping on that grenade for me there. Appreciate that.
We got Backyard TARDIS. I don't remember being mad about the movie, but I also don't remember anything about the movie. That's very true. And then we've got J Bomba back. Green Lantern should have been written by Al Gore.
This guy's ruining, throwing money at you for nothing.
So the one thing I wanted to add, because Jeff brought up a really good point, another great point. I felt that one of the reasons why it wasn't just the studio execs that hated superheroes, it was the creatives or the people they put in charge as the visionaries. Because when you have a guy, and he said this as far back as 2009, when you have a guy who basically his mindset when he sees these superheroes in the big two is, well, why isn't everyone having sex with each other and killing each other? That's the guy you want in charge of your DCEU? Are you kidding me? Of course it's going to fail if that's the mindset you have.
Yeah,
sounds like an indie author. Sounds like a lit RPG indie author is what it sounds
I
like to
do
me.
agree with that. There are just so many moments in that were really ugly. I gotta say, like, again, going back to Oa, Cece, when he goes to Oa, and the image that Jeffrey just showed, and he's now surrounded by his fellow officers for the first time, and they raise their fists to the sky, and say "Green Lantern's might" or something. I can't remember what they all chanted. That scared the piss out of me. I didn't want to be there. I don't want to, like, I would have been, if I was there. That looked like some kind of weird Klan rally to me. It felt extremely unwelcoming. It felt really dark and ugly, and I just didn't. They're not
the CGI
showing.
wasn't good either.
What wasn't good?
The CGI was terrible
The
too.
CGI looked weird, but it just.
Yeah.
You should want to be there. You should be like, this looks like fun. I just got this ring and I just joined the coolest intergalactic space force. I wish we actually had clips of the movie to show. It was
You want that?
I wouldn't mind. I mean, just to kind of show, like, movies should make you feel some way. You know what I mean? Like, these superhero movies should make you feel some way. I will never forget the 1978 Superman movie. I'll never forget the 1989 Batman movie. Which really, for the first time, I think, established like who these characters were and made me like them. I haven't liked. Let's think about the DCU. Have I liked? Look at that.
Oh God!
It looks like Monster Fest.
It looks like mucus. That's what it looks like. It looks like the inside of someone's.
Well, they all look like monsters. I mean, they went for the sex appeal with the girl in the front, but I mean, like, they all look like monsters who are about to eat you.
Light them up with their lanterns, you assholes. They're lanterns.
Yeah.
The entire purpose of the lantern corps is to light up the darkest corners of the universe. Why does it look like this? And I swear to God, I wish I were there. I wish I were involved in this creatively now, in retrospect, because I would have rejected this whole heart. I would have said no. The sky needs to be blue or green, maybe light green. It needs to be alive. They're literally called lanterns for that reason. They go to the darkest corners of the universe and they bring light to it. And how do they do that when this is their home planet, where this is where they meet up? And it looks like Mordor. It looks like hell. And when they chant, it's scary.
Yeah.
I think honestly, the smart thing would have been to do is he stays grounded up until the end of the first movie. Second movie is when he goes to Oa, and that's where you establish the feud with Sinestro. And then Sinestro's fall, or even, what even can be, Sinestro's maybe watching him. We tease at him in the first movie. And then Sinestro, we see him, like, we see the feud established between them in that movie, and then the jealousy and anger. And then the third movie, it's all about him versus Sinestro.
CC, check this out. I mean, look, yeah, you're exactly right. That first movie, where we meet, oh God, what's the alien's name that gave him the ring? How can I be this?
Abin Sur.
Abin Sur. Getting old. So we meet Abin Sur. He's got a purple face. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's our first alien. And that's our introduction to aliens. And we get a ring from them and we learn to trust them because they're Green Lanterns. And then at the end, after an adventure where maybe he fights Sonar, maybe he fights Shark, maybe he fights one of his earthbound villains with his ring and wins. Here comes another purple-faced alien, Sinestro, wearing a green suit and says, I've been watching you. I'm here to train you to be the greatest Green Lantern. That would have been the shit.
That would have been amazing. That's how you end the movie. Boom. Right there. And I think even one of the things, too, is maybe if they love tying everything together, maybe it could have been he found something in terms of like what they were doing, or maybe what they did with Abin Sur's ship, what they're trying to do with it, like the company that was kind of interfering with the crash. That could have tied in maybe what they're trying to do, like they're doing some illegal stuff with Abin Sur's remains and then the alien ship. And that could have been part of his journey in terms of what he was going to stop. And maybe, again, part of like, okay, maybe what is his fatal flaw in the beginning of the movie? What we see it is, his cockiness or whatever. But whatever we see him overcome that as he's taking on whatever villain, whatever the grounded villain is and whatever the big overarching villain on Earth is. And then I think they should have just never touched Parallax, because that's just such a loaded history for particularly many hardcore Green Lantern fans. It just looked bad.
A really common issue with superhero movies, especially the DC ones, but some of the Marvel ones too, is they want the payoff with doing the work. You know what I mean? The moment in Green Lantern Rebirth where Batman approaches Jessica Cruz and tells her about what real fear is and like hugs her, that moment only works and stops her from her rampage. That moment only works because the reader loves Batman, understands the lore, understands what's going on. If you put that in a movie, especially like in the beginning of a movie, you wouldn't know what the heck was happening, and there'd be no emotional payoff because there was no emotional buildup. None. And that was the entire problem with Parallax as the villain. Nobody knew who Parallax was. Nobody cared who Parallax was. And those of us who did know who Parallax were pissed that he was in the movie, because Parallax, as everybody really knows, was made up to cover DC's horrible decision to turn Green Lantern into the villain. So yeah, it was just dumb writing.
It fell into that trap of the big gaseous bad guy. He's just like this nebulous cloud. And it's kind of like when filmmakers don't know how to make a villain threatening, they just make him a cloud, because it's like, how do you beat a cloud?
Clouds are scary.
They tried to humanize him a little bit with the Hector Hammond character, but he was so detached from Hal Jordan, like there was no real kind of rivalry or kind of personal connection there.
Not only was there no theme holding the movie together, there were no stake holding the movie together, there was no emotional connection between Hal and his powers and the end of the movie. It was all a bunch of individual scenes just pushed together and taken here and there from comic books, like a lot of superhero movies are. Hey, the fans, it's the name the fans will recognize. It's in there. Oh, they'll love that. That's all we want.
Going back to what Ethan said earlier, like if the movie had focused on Hal being trained by Sinestro, and by the end of the movie, Sinestro's the bad guy that Hal has to face off with, make it like more of a...
Like it was in the comics, you mean?
No, that's DC and I agree that the movie ends with him meeting Sinestro. Yeah. Episode 2 is Yoda and Luke Skywalker. It's The Empire Strikes Back.
Because by that point, you have people invested in the character and his journey. You have them invested. Oh, we like Hal. Okay, we can buy into the fact that he has this magic ring. Then you expand. Then you can do more.
So the original comic, more out there. Yeah, there's a lot more, young man. You don't know how big this is, and it branches out into Oa, and you meet the Green Lantern Corps, and he understands his place now that he's learned how to enforce this law here on Earth, and be a good interstellar space cop. Now he can go meet all of the other Lanterns. And then that's the second movie. And then the third movie, maybe you want to introduce the Red Lanterns. Maybe you want to broaden out to the entire spectrum. But it takes a while to get people
Star
there.
Sapphire for the third movie.
Oh, that'll be Carol.
Oh, that's
well,
Carol.
The thing is in the original comic, when he became Green Lantern, he didn't immediately go off into space and meet Sinestro. No. He stayed on Earth for a while. And then there was actually an arc where, and it's 1959, so I'm using the word arc loosely, but he was or was not going to be Green Lantern at any given minute, and finally decided to be Green Lantern, and that's when he met Sinestro, who trained him for a while, and he thought Sinestro was great. They were buds, and then Sinestro was like enslaving people, and that's when that friendship ended. And that would have been a cool, a cool way to end the second movie, would be him finding out that Sinestro was enslaving a whole planet, but Sinestro had the Green Lantern Corps on his side.
Sinestro, he's more of a terrorist. The idea of Sinestro is to use terror to control. Whereas the Green Lantern Corps has, they believe in justice and light and truth, and all making the ring power itself via the user's willpower. Sinestro believes in keeping the universe in order through fear. He's a literal terrorist, and the Sinestro Corps.
He's the devil.
He's not the devil.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, he's right.
No, I mean the idea of will bow to me, and I will make you do it. Is what I mean.
Okay, gotcha.
The analogy, not necessarily literal.
Yeah, we can, if we just force people to be afraid, and then fear actually powers those yellow rings. So the fear that they generate through the universe makes them more powerful. It's corrupting. It is a corrupt force, the Sinestro Corps, the Yellow Lanterns. And that's where he sort of falls I would say falls from grace, falls from the Green Lantern Corps.
And that could be that would have been a great thing to see. Like, you could almost have it be like the end of the second movie is almost kind of like the end of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, when Snape gets revealed as the Half-Blood Prince and has to betray. Well, I mean, this time Sinestro actually does betray, but where Hal is going against him, and Sinestro just kind of has his number because he's trained him, and also because he has this new yellow ring that his powers can't affect, because there's that whole green can't affect yellow situation. So again, it's like, I feel that
the reason why green and yellow don't work together is that fear affects willpower. So,
of course,
it's just a matter of it's not that green and yellow as colors conflict. It's just that in order to make your ring work, you have to feel zero fear, and in order for the Yellow Lantern ring to work, it has to be absorbing fear. So if the Yellow Lantern ring is working, your Green Lantern ring isn't working so well, and that's the whole conflict that we put together to make it so that Hal couldn't be defeated by a banana.
and I think that okay, and that's probably
like back in the day.
Back in the day, because that was the thing. I think I misread it, because I remember I was reading when during the whole Return of Superman arc that was going on, and so there was there was actually an issue of Green Lantern where, because Mongol and Hank Henshaw destroyed Coast City, and so I think they kind of wrote, like, when he was facing Mongol, he was like, "The bastard's yellow. I'm gonna have to do this," and that's probably where I was thinking about.
Well, that actually was a thing, Charles. That was a thing.
Okay.
There was like an impurity in the lantern on OA, and
we had to
got rid of it.
all of that.
Yeah, they retconned all of it. Yeah,
with Rebirth,
and they got rid of it because it was dumb.
Yeah, it was.
Guys, let me get back to the movie a bit. I want to ask you. We're kind of talking about it right now. So one of the big things that I think comic book movies in particular have had problems with is adapting the comic books into the film format. And I think this Green Lantern movie is a prime example of how not to adapt the comic to film. So what do you guys think were the elements that they got wrong in the adaptation, and how do you think they could have adapted things better?
I think they hated the source material is what they did. I mean, I know Jeff Johns worked on it, but I mean, they at the very least didn't like it. And that's super obvious with a lot of these superhero movies, where it's like the people don't like it at all. And it comes across. You got to love the stuff you're writing, or it comes out. I mean, like, you can read one issue of, well, I'll use Rebirth, Green Lantern Rebirth as an example. The lines and the writing in that book are crafted by someone who loved what they were doing, right? And you can tell. I mean, I tell my kids this when I cook for them. The secret ingredient is love. My food is better because I love making it for them. My writing is good because I love writing for the audience that I have, and I know who my audience is. Yes. I'm not writing for someone who's never going to buy my books. I'm writing for people who love superheroes of the 80s and 90s and early aughts, who love, truth, justice, and the American way. Truth, justice, and the American way, not, truth and justice, and I can't say the American way because I might get canceled. So, and you have people who are making these movies, from the best script to the director, who could give a flip about who Green Lantern is, or the DC universe as a whole, or any of these characters. They were handed a hat full of names and said, "Hey, make sure all these names are in the movie." Kilowog. I mean, like, Kilowog was in the movie to stomp on Hal Jordan's head a few times, and then claim credit at the end of the movie. Superhero Girls, DC Superhero Girls, does a better Kilowog than that Green Lantern did.
This was still at a time when comic book movies were just vehicles to sell toys for the studio. That's all they cared about.
No, it wasn't, though.
Well, that might
Iron Man had come out.
Well, I mean, that also might be why we did go straight to OA. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but they put out a ton of toys.
Right.
Yeah,
they wanted the toys, all the aliens. But it's just like, again,
I collected them. I had them.
If kids are scared of OA and the aliens and the whatever mucus brigade they have there, why the hell would they buy the toys?
Also, as a funny side note, Jessica Cruz on DC Superhero Girls is my 6-year-old's favorite character on DC Superhero Girls. So
nice.
Good on you, Ethan.
Thanks.
Good stuff. Thank you for that. And then even I feel like going back to what parts didn't work, and like I said, they clearly hated the source material, or at least were apathetic towards it. They got Hal Jordan's basic character wrong. The whole journey that he had, like, what was the theme? What were we trying to do? Because at least with the Dark Knight trilogy, each movie, even though the third movie wasn't as good, each movie kind of had a theme. You kind of had with the first one, it was kind of like fear, dealing with fear, Scarecrow, overcoming that fear, what he's afraid, turning it into a weapon. And then you had the second one that dealt with, I mean, you could say chaos, but it almost escalation as well. Like, okay, I'm here to make a change, but there's blowback. It's like I created a power vacuum. What's going to escalate from there? It was based on that whole conversation at the end of Batman Begins. That's what the second movie was in many ways. That was kind of when you look at it. And then the third one is, it was almost kind of like, it was like redemption. It was redemption. Yes, being redeemed, and actually kind of truly falling through. And okay, I can be Batman, but there's more out there for me than that. So what was the theme for Green Lantern? What was the point? It didn't really have one. Two, the supporting characters didn't really do their job and support him. They were kind of like, okay, maybe there's a little laugh there. So, you know, he had the quirky sidekick with the fluffy hair, who ended up being
Taika Waititi.
I know, I know, but it's like he had the fluffy kind of quirky sidekick who made the jokes, and it was just like, again, like you said earlier,
the evil general.
The evil general, the corrupt dad, and then also what also felt forced was, oh, they all knew each other as kids, and I'm like, Hammond too? What was it really? So,
also, you had Amanda Waller in there.
Yeah, she was in there.
Yeah, she was in there for like 10 seconds. It was Angela Bassett.
Yeah, it was Angela Bassett, but it was more than 10
Her
seconds.
name was actually Waller in that movie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Waller, but it is Amanda Waller if you look at the credits.
And then she got killed.
Then she got killed.
Then she got killed, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah. I like the animated Superman and Batman comics that Bruce Timm did, where she's just like enormous, you know, and she's telling Lex Luthor what to do. I love that.
I love when she roasted. I love when she roasted what's his face, Batman. He's like, rich boy, and he's just like, real he had surprise Pikachu face.
Real quick, J Bomba fan, aka Steroid Cecil, he asked Ethan, 1 OA or 2 OA?
Well, it depends on the vehicle that you are rowing. I would say, 1 OA for a canoe, and 2 OAs for a rowboat.
All right, sounds good.
Glad you got that.
All right, so I wanted to ask you guys.
Inside joke on my channel right now.
I wanted to ask you guys. So this is an origin story, obviously, for the Green Lantern, and it seems to fall into all the pitfalls of a bad origin story. So what do you guys think they could have done better to make the origin story more interesting, as opposed to just having it meander all over the place like it did?
Hired me to write it.
Well, that.
I think that back to kind of what Ethan said and what kind of, I think you said it, Matt, just in terms of like who Hal Jordan is. Like, because I think one of the most important things of an origin story is that we have to be rooting, even if they are not where they need to be yet, we have to root for the main character. We have to give a crap about their story. We have to be on their side. And it doesn't come from just pity. Ooh, they lost their dad. Fine, whatever. But it's just like, what about them? What is it about? What characteristic draws you in? And I think kind of he's reckless, but he knows he's cocky, he's arrogant, but he knows what he's doing. He takes risks. He takes risks, but he's not reckless. Exactly.
Why? Because he's not afraid. That's why the ring comes to him. He is before Daredevil, the man without fear. So we need to to establish these things about him in the first few minutes that he's on the screen. He doesn't have fear. He's not afraid, and he never gives up. And that's why the ring comes to him. Now, do we ever see that? We see him missing appointments. We see him crashing his car nearly, being irresponsible. We see him being a jerk to, Carol, which is okay. He's allowed.
He's also got that one night stand. There's water in the tap.
That's yeah. I mean, all of these things. That doesn't say anything about him except this guy's a dick.
He's a dick and he's unreliable.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
reckless.
That's not somebody who the ring would go to. So we need to establish early on that he is a man without fear, and he never gives up. And then over the course of the movie, we need to push that to the limit, terrify him. I mean, give him reason to be afraid, and then force him to come to the brink of nearly giving up, and then reminding us that he is never going to give up because he's a Green Lantern. He's Hal Jordan. He's, that's what it's all about.
Yeah,
So that
And,
should be the theme of the movie.
that's one of the reasons why Batman Begins, the origin story, works so well there. Is because we find, even though he's lost, but he's still searching for something. He's searching to understand the criminal element. He's going to these worst places because he wants to get revenge. I wouldn't say revenge. He wants to get justice for what happened to his parents. Because some part of him still wants to save his city.
He never wants to be a victim again.
Yeah.
And then he's a victim, and he was victimized by crime. And so now he's trying to find things, like when he falls into the bat cave and he's afraid of the bats, and he learns to not be afraid anymore, just of things that scare him, so that he can't be victimized.
And what's funny, Ethan, is that you talked about how Hal Jordan is someone who never gives up, whereas in this movie he literally gives up at the midpoint of the film, where after his training he's like, oh, this isn't for me, and he fucks off back home. So I always feel like a good origin story is a hero's journey that is kind of intertwined with the central conflict of the movie. So like the plot's always moving forward with it. And I think you hit the nail on the head is that would have been an interesting film if he was, without fear, and then that kept being tested. Like that to me is the sign of like a really good central conflict.
Yeah,
absolutely. The biggest problem with that movie, and other than just saying easily that the writing, but when you're writing a story, when you're starting a story, the first thing you show your character doing is the thing that people are going to identify the most with the character. And there's some frat boy in Hollywood who thinks it's so cool to open a movie or a book or TV show with the dude in bed with some girl who doesn't even have a name. They just think that's the coolest thing ever because that's what they would love to do, I guess. But what does that actually tell you? Like as an adult, what does that actually tell you about somebody? This is somebody who's grown up, who hasn't grown up yet. This is somebody who has no idea what a committed relationship is about. This is somebody who isn't responsible. This is somebody who doesn't even remember her name, which is a total jerk move. And then the next thing they show you do him is reckless driving in his car. So like there is no point in this movie at which we look at Hal Jordan as a character and say this is a redeeming character. There is no saving this movie. It would require a complete rewrite, complete reshoot.
But I think it would work depending on the character. Like it worked for Tony Stark because that was part of his personality.
Only because his character arc was the change, though.
It works with Bruce Wayne because that's an act.
Exactly.
That's not who he really is.
Tony's character arc was a change arc.
Yes.
Hal isn't supposed to change because the ring chooses him because of who he is, not because of who he might be one day.
The ring needs to stop working. Did this? I didn't see the whole movie. Did he give up and he's got the ring that is powered by his own willpower and determination and lack of fear. And we need to actually drive that home. And again, tell me if this happens. Does the ring stop working because he gives up and feels fear and then has to learn to overcome that to make the ring work again?
No.
He falls out of the sky?
No, at one point he has to give the ring up to Parallax in order to save Carol. But then like he pulls like a fast one on Parallax and the ring comes back to him. And he uses that to fight it back. So.
He does give up, and he is afraid in the movie. That was the thing that got me about it, was when he was on OA, he was afraid. I mean, you could tell it. Ryan did a great job on OA being afraid. He's afraid the entire time.
Ring shouldn't work.
I mean, I would be afraid if I was there too. It was monsters. I felt like the Colonial Marines needed to come in. Yeah.
Well, his floating head was afraid.
Yeah, that's
that
CGI
would be cool if like Kilowog shows up and like beats the hell out of him, and Hal's trying to get his ring to work, and Kilowog's like, the thing's not going to work while you're afraid of me, so get some balls right now, and forced him to
that would have been great.
Stand up and make his ring work.
While we're on the topic of Kilowog, I wanted to touch on this, which is how to do a proper training montage, because this training montage that they do in this movie just seems kind of like forced into it. And it was very bizarre the way they went about handling it, where basically Kilowog comes up, he starts training Hal Jordan. Hal is making all these like weird constructs with the ring, but he keeps getting his butt kicked, and eventually he just gives up. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you think would have been a proper way to introduce a training montage into this movie to show how Hal learns to use the ring?
They could have showed him actually teaching him how to use it. They just started attacking him. That's not training. You're attacking somebody without him knowing what to do. That was dumb. Like, I thought that was bad.
We're going to beat the living crap out of you and see what happens.
Also, Hal wasn't good at anything.
Learned?
He wasn't good at anything with the ring. The one thing he should have been like better than everybody else with is flying, because he was a pilot, right? He should have been better at flying than everybody else. He could have sucked at everything else, but he could have been really good at flying. And he just wasn't good with anything. I mean, he created really basic, like someone with no imagination, or like watched the Super Friends cartoon, and that's what they knew about Justice League or Hal Jordan. And so, yeah, he created a chain gun and some boxing gloves and a Lego car. That was it. I
always felt like Hal was different. Like Hal's not an artist. Kyle Rayner's an artist. So he creates intricate, constructs. But Hal's the kind of guy who just does what needs to be done to get something done. And so when I used to draw Hal's constructs, they would literally just be a beam, like chopsticks, like anything like that, just simple shapes to just move you out of the way, break something open, whatever it was that he needed to get done. Making machine guns and things like that, that it's not really.
The Lego car was weird. Like
I didn't see that.
He has the Lego car catch a helicopter that's falling out of the sky, and then it goes down this Hot Wheels track, and it's just
very
like
over the top just to get the helicopter.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. I'll get. You know what? In the origin, and that's another thing too, is that does every movie have to? I know you're trying to get the women demographic, but does every movie have to have a love interest? Do you have to have a forced love interest? It's like no,
not forced, but storytelling is about telling the story of the human condition, and the human condition is love and laughter and all that stuff. So you gotta have.
You got to get.
It just felt forced. It felt forced. It was
forced. It absolutely was forced. That's
but I will say one thing. I will give one thing. It was probably one of the few positive scenes in the entire movie. It was the fact that Carol pretty much knew it was him after like a minute of looking at him and her reaction. That was actually pretty funny.
The best scene in this film, and I say that kind of sarcastically, is when he shows up at her window and she's like, "Oh, Green Lantern," and then she's like, "Wait, Hal?" And she's like, "Did you think that little mask was gonna? I've known you since we were kids." And he's like, "Oh well, the mask came with the outfit. I didn't think that anyone would notice." And it's just like, nah, dude. It's like it's so
pretty funny.
It's so obviously you. So like that was kind of like a cute little scene, but at the same time, it was just kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
Silly.
They just the movie didn't have the runtime. It didn't have the people who like these characters. It didn't have the writing chops. Whoever wrote it. I mean, you can actually write something pretty good and not like it. I've written some romance stuff under a pen name as a pay. What's it called when you
pay
don't
for
get
play?
Any rights? Ghostwrite. I ghostwrote some stuff that was romance, and they did pretty good. The guy liked them, and he ordered some more. So I mean, but you have to love writing and storytelling in general. But it really helps if you absolutely love the characters. And again, I know I'm hitting that drum hard, but it's so obvious that they didn't. It's like the original X-Men movie, as good as it was. Those were those characters in name only.
Speaking of loving the characters, Jeff, I don't know if you can call this up now, but you were showing me some panels that Ethan had drawn of Batman and the Green Lantern, and you were explaining it in such a fantastic way where basically the way Ethan drew Batman, it was all in shadow up until the point the Green Lantern uses the light from his ring.
Bear in mind, Ethan, I'm not blowing smoke. You were fantastic artists. You know that. Charles knows this about me. Me and Charles met because we bonded over comic books at a con. That was for writing, and it had nothing to do with comics.
I followed you on Twitter, Charles. I hope you follow me back.
I definitely will. Absolutely.
And so, all these characters, I get really heated and passionate about these characters because these characters mean things. Oh, well, now I'm sad.
Wait, no, I will. I don't think I followed. I might have.
But these characters mean stuff to me. I grew up with them, and it's killing me, like in my heart, watching these companies just. What did your boy Zach say about uh, uh, crop sharing these characters out to be destroyed, by
Interesting.
people who don't like them.
Yeah.
So yeah, here's that panel I was talking about. So, as a big fan of Batman, who is the detective Batman and not like the the Dark Knight Batman, which I didn't feel like was a detective. Like Batman has a mystique to him, and I've said this before, and I said it before the show. This drawing of Batman tells you everything you absolutely need to know about Batman in one panel. Everybody else has got details, and they've got light, and they've got reflections, and Superman and Green Lantern. You can see who they are. Batman is a shadow, and he's only not a shadow when Green Lantern casts light on him. And you can look at the reaction. It's like he's a vampire. He's like, the light. You're revealing me.
Right.
And Ethan was telling me something I didn't know, which was Batman was going to be the villain of the piece.
Well, not the villain, but you look at what he's saying there. Jeff wrote him, and it was my choice to just show him in silhouette because it was artistically valid, not just because it saved me a lot of time.
No,
but it did save me a lot of time.
Yeah, I imagine.
Don't understand. I get paid whether I draw him fully or just silhouette him out. I get paid the same. So, but here was the whole thing. Batman's a shadow from which the voice of doubt. Because there was a voice of doubt. There were a lot of people who said Hal Jordan can never come back because he killed people. He's a mass murderer. And so you've got Batman, who is a shadow. He's a shape, and he is saying the things that the fans would be saying. I don't think Hal Jordan ever changed, John. He was always bad. He never worried when others came. Okay, so all the things that he's saying there are people who've gotten accustomed to Guy Gardner and Kyle Rayner and all these other substitutes. And you can see Batman's teeth. He's about to bite John. Like he's going to eat John's whole world. You see how John's head is in his teeth there? And John just finally says enough and just lights him up. And for who you are, this is who you are. You're a man and you're a full-grown man in bed sheets. Exactly. I'm not afraid of you. And this is what it is. It's like, that's what Green Lanterns do. They light up the darkest corners of the universe. And John is revealing the truth.
And I feel like...
In brightest day and darkest night.
Yeah. And you picked the perfect two characters to do it, right? Because
I'm a genius.
John Stewart.
I agree with you, Jeffrey. I said so much about these two characters in 2 pages.
John Stewart's great.
Really? Yeah. And it's like I showed my daughter this. My daughter is a up and coming artist, and she wants to be a comic book artist because I'm a superhero author, and she got really into comics because of it. And now she wants to be an artist, and she is a really good artist. But I showed her this, and I was telling her, I didn't even occur to me that you did this to save time. I thought it was completely an artistic choice.
It was, but believe me, that it was like one of those things where it's like,
it says so much about Batman that is right, and so much about Green Lantern that is right, that I feel like if you can't look at this page and understand that, then you don't understand these characters and you have no business writing them. I know that's a hard line to say, but it really is.
I love him up in Batman's face there at the end. He's like, what is Batman when you're not afraid of him?
Exactly. Just a man.
And Superman has to be like, settle down, boys, because that's what Superman would do.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this comic. I love these panels.
And another thing too, it shows Batman kind of like physically what he is, and also the distrust. Kind of like he's this, so I'm judging him as this. He's with all the other bad people, and it shows John Stewart being loyal to not just his brother in arms, but to the core and what it means to be a Green Lantern. Like, just because, as horrible as what he did was, that doesn't erase all the good that and that's what he's kind of going to, is like, he was the man without fear. This is who he was. And I love him standing up, and not only using that to stand up for Hal Jordan, but using that as an indictment of Batman in many ways. So just like, okay, take away the shadows. Who are you? You're just a man.
Billionaire playboy philanthropist.
But again, just remember, Jeff Johns is saying that about the fans. I mean, if you look at that, Batman represents fans that don't like what he's about to do. And so when you see, it's like, you guys are just voices on the internet. Who are you? It's like, you're just people. I'm going to still do this anyway. And that's basically what that scene actually means, which is, take that however you want.
Well, I appreciate, I really appreciate the collective medium of comic books, both the writing and the art. But first and foremost, just like movies, comics are a visual medium. And nothing pains me more than to walk into a library or comic store these days and open up a new comic and have it be wall-to-wall text. And so I can look at that panel, take out the text, and kind of know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And if you can't do that with a movie, if you can't mute a movie and watch it and know what's going on, somebody has done something very wrong. You shouldn't need, especially a genre movie, you shouldn't need dialogue and 3 voiceovers, which is what we got in the Green Lantern movie, to tell people what was going on when you could have just showed it to them throughout the course of the movie. I mean, not only do you have the first voiceover, you have the second voiceover, and then you have like a third one at the end, I think. So it's like, you don't need that.
The movie ended up just killing everything that we had built. And that's what's so sad about it. I mean, Green Lantern was second only to Batman at DC. It seems hard to believe now, but we made it that popular, and we were building something even bigger, and the movie just castrated the entire franchise, the entire IP.
Sounds about right.
And there's enough blame to go around, but really what I've come to realize is that it's more amazing when a good movie does get made. Because I mean, the way Hollywood works, all of these movies should be terrible. So that when you get something like Wonder Woman, it's amazing. When you get the
first Wonder Woman,
first one, the second one is just typical.
The first 2/3 of the Wonder Woman.
2/3, yeah.
When you get Avengers, it's amazing. How did that happen? It's like at some point, you've got to get somebody who has the right creative vision and let them be an auteur and just leave them alone. Not somebody like Zack Snyder. He has the wrong creative vision and wants to be an auteur.
And that's the thing. The thing also is about, like, when you need a Feige, you need a guy who's a good mastermind who understands it, who really understands comic. Yes,
John Favreau.
And it was John Favreau. He's the one who fought to get RDJ on his Iron Man. He fought because he just knew this is the guy. And when you think about it, it's just like, oh, you know what? This makes sense. Like, in terms of what you're trying to do, he's actually perfect as Tony Stark. And so, like, you need somebody who has that. And I think, unfortunately, Kevin Feige is like, he's a unicorn, unfortunately, when it comes to what he did and what he was able to do for MCU, or at least the Infinity Saga.
Ethan, can I ask you, because I know that that DC wanted to bring on Jeff Johns because of his success on the comic book side as like their version of Kevin Feige, where he'd be the creative kind of director of the DC universe, and he had input on all these movies. Why do you think that didn't translate from the comic books to the movies? Because it seems like Jeff Johns has just not done anything right with the films so far.
I don't think Jeff ever got the respect from Hollywood that he got from comics, because in the comic industry, people just let him do whatever he wants. In Hollywood, he's got to argue about who Batman is with Ben Affleck. You know what I mean? He's got to have conversations with Ray Fisher about whether or not Cyborg still has his penis. It's like there's all kinds of egos and trouble and problems brewing at all points where everybody thinks that they should be the one in charge. And Jeff was hired over there to basically see if he could maintain some sort of order within Warner Brothers and keep those characters true to what the comic books were, the way the characters are traditionally understood. But then again, you've got to fight people, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. The Joker worked, but Jeff never would have let that happen. Exactly. Jeff never would have let that happen. The Cyborg booyah moment, is that what you're referencing, or are you saying Joker? Okay, yeah. I mean, it's like, Jeff's trying to create some sort of internal consistency and also fighting with elements within Warner Brothers who really want these movies to be dark. It's like the Justice League movie looked like hell on earth. These are the super friends. And, Jeff understands that. Jeff understands like how DC is fundamentally different from the world of DC is fundamentally different from Marvel. And yet, he had to argue with all these different people. I don't think he did a good job, because he ended up making an awful lot of enemies out of creative people as he was trying to enforce, his ideas or function the way he was supposed to function over there. And again, that was his job. These arguments he's getting into, that's what he was hired to do. He was hired to maintain his idea, because he knows the DCU better than anyone, of what these characters should be in the Marvel universe. Now everybody hates them.
DC universe.
His DC universe,
Yeah.
which is the most successful in comics, and that's undebatable.
And the thing is that what the problem also with Warner Brothers is that they're just like, oh, Batman was dark in this, so we're going to do that for everything. Like, one thing is like, you had an opportunity to make almost subgenres within these films, kind of like almost what they're kind of doing with MCU right now, where you have kind of the more cosmic stuff, then you have the more magic, the more mystic stuff that's going on, and then you have the more grounded kind of espionage geopolitical with the Captain America universe, we'll just call it that. You could have had that where you had the mystical, more mythology thing with Wonder Woman, with a little more grounded stuff. You had the alien, but kind of slice of life Superman. Obviously, there's the alien aspect, but you have kind of how he is, what he represents to humanity. Then you have the more grounded, street level, gritty stuff with Batman. And they decided to make everything grounded, gritty, and dark. And like everyone's mad and everyone's this. And you see that with Titans, which is a show.
What was the other movie Zack Snyder made?
Yeah, shows.
I
mean, then again, you've got Jeff Johns doing Stars and Stripe or whatever that is. He's Stargirl. I still haven't watched it yet. It's getting. I don't want to watch it.
It's actually really good. It's actually pretty good.
It's getting great reviews, and they're leaving him alone because it's his, and
it's a TV show. Nobody cares.
Yeah, he kind of just gets his way, and it's good. So, I mean, when I say why I'm being generous to Jeff, it might just be that he's lousy at movies and TV and should not have that job. That could be. But it could also be, and I think it's more likely, that there are 1,000 cooks there, everybody with egos, everybody trying to get clout, everybody trying to have their say. And Jeff's job, without the respect that Kevin Feige would have, is impossible. It's impossible to enforce. And problems are going to and did arise.
He needed a hit, and he never got one. He needed a huge, unquestionable, undeniable hit that was him, like Kevin Feige had with Iron Man.
Agree.
Guys, there's something I want to ask all you about, but before that, we have one super chat from Mexican Iron Man. It says, "Hail the great creator of the Spectrum. Hail the great EVS. I'm a proud member of the Caps channel. Great panel. Hey, Kadish. Hey, Mexican Iron Man. Thanks for the super chat." Iron Man. So kind of involved with all this is, we started this talking about the Green Lantern movie, but I really want to talk about the bad writing that we see in comics nowadays, because, I mean, EVS even said that Comicsgate is a direct answer to the bad writing that we're seeing. What do you think, or why do you think the comics are in such a sorry state of storytelling nowadays, and how do you think that could be fixed?
Okay, so Jeff and I have had many a conversation about this offline, and a lot of it is because more or less nowadays you have people who are not writers. They never learned the basic tenets of storytelling, and they see, whether it be comics, whether it be TV, whether it be films, they don't see them as a place to tell stories, to bring characters to life. They see them as a platform for certain agendas. And that's why you got Marvel Now. That's why you almost got DC 5G. You have these, and it's like you have people who don't have a single creative bone in their body. Like, I probably have more creativity in these glasses than they have in their body. And same with Jeff and his hair than they have in their body, because these people, all they do is they're cultural vandals, where they'll take these characters, they'll kill off the legacy characters, and then they'll put these like new other characters, a woman, a person of color, an alien.
See, are you Comicsgate? Are you telling me that you're Comicsgate right now?
I have my opinions. I have how I feel about, because I don't read comics anymore. Like the same reason why Jeff started writing his superhero books is the same reason I started writing superhero books, because I did the J.R.R. Tolkien thing. I wanted to read superhero fiction. I wanted to write superhero fiction that I would like to read, because I was not satisfied with what I was seeing in comic books that I loved for years, whether it be like X-Men, whether it be Avengers, whether it be Superman. I mean, there are other reasons, not just kind of like the replacement that they're doing, but it was just like, I was tired of it was just bad writing, and it was just repetitive. And it It's essentially
Bad
a snow
art, too.
globe. Bad art too. Like the art used to be so much better in the 90s even. But it's just like Rob Liefeld excluded from all that because, his crimes against physiology would just never be forgiven. But it's like basically comics nowadays is a snow globe. They shake everything up and then everything settles back to the way it is before. That's probably my biggest issue more than anything else with comic books is
There's no continuity, yeah.
No, there's no continuity. Nothing ever changed. It's just the same thing. They're almost these franchises within these, the big two have become too big to fail. And so they can't move forward. They can't really progress. So they just have to kill somebody off and they're going to come back in like a year or two.
Well, look at so for years after One More Day, which is the comic arguably that had me stop reading Marvel. You had Dan Slott take over Spider-Man for 10 years, right? And for 10 years, he said, no, I can't put MJ back into the mix with Peter because the higher-ups won't allow it. The higher-ups won't allow it. The higher-ups won't allow it. And then he was at some con and he said, listen, MJ is never getting back with Peter Parker, right? And then he wrote the spinoff when they did that whole colliding universe thing called Renew Your Vows, which was awesome, which was MJ and Pete, and it was super popular. But he's kept on saying, that's it. That's all you're getting. You're lucky you got that. And then he moved on to write Fantastic Four. The very first issue that Nick Spencer took over Amazing Spider-Man, MJ and Pete were back together at the end of the issue. So clearly it wasn't the higher-ups. It was the writer who hated that, who hated MJ and Pete. Now, admittedly, there is a long and complicated history with MJ and Pete in comics and in the editorial room.
Joe Quesadilla.
Yeah, and then the second Nick Spencer leaves, what do? They break up MJ and Pete again. And it's just like... it goes back to like you have all these writers who Nick Spencer did the best run on Amazing Spider-Man the Spidey's had in 20 years. I mean, period.
Or even another thing too is in order to write Spider-Man well, or they think as well, he has to be a loser, which is dumb.
He's got bad luck, is what he has to have. Parker luck. But I mean, like if you look at the DC side of things, like you're talking about continuity, they did the New 52, right? Let's take Starfire. She's one of my favorite characters. I grew up reading Starfire in the original Teen Titans. I was so mystified when Cyborg showed up in the Justice League because I'm like, Cyborg was never part of the Justice League. He was one of the Teen Titans.
He was a Titan,
right? So Starfire,
well,
great character. They didn't always have her 100% the same, but for the most part, she was the warrior princess, right, from space. And then New 52 happens, and she's the warrior hooker from space.
Pretty much.
And it's like, what are you guys doing here? And now she had a miniseries a while back that kind of brought her back to that's more of an innocent, I don't know what's happening here on Earth kind of thing. But they have no continuity. Now what did they have, Charles? Would they just come out? I am not Starfire. Completely whole other Starfire that is unrecognizable. And so they have no continuity.
Well, she also looks exactly like the author of that comic book.
Well,
I mean, it's almost,
I wonder why.
I would lie if
self-insert.
I would lie if I said I never did a self-insert on a book, on a novel. But I mean,
I mean that
we all
blatant.
Do.
Yeah.
Well, I don't draw, so I mean, I can't do that blatant of self-insert.
Let me just point this out. So, Ethan, you had a scoop a while back about DC turning Superman gay. And
I forgot about that. Yeah, you did.
What? What?
Yeah, he did. He spoiled it for him.
And
awesome.
I'm glad you did. Okay.
He legit broke this story before it got confirmed.
They're so mad at me over there.
Yeah, they were.
I'm so glad you did that.
But that's the perfect example of how comics are kind of just burning the earth, scorching the earth upon which the foundations of these stories are built. Ethan, can you tell us a little bit about like why you think
Superman is gay?
Well, why you think DC feels the need to do this, and why do you think fans will reject it?
You could almost use that in past tense. Why fans rejected it? Because they did.
Oh God. Okay, go on, Ethan. Sorry.
Well, I think all of this is there are a lot of reasons for the current diversity push in comics. In the case of Superman, well, first of all, why is it a thing? There are some people who sincerely believe that it's genuine, that it isn't corporate, that it isn't political. They just feel like it's fair, and I do agree. It's like I think that comics should reflect the world outside your window, just like Stan Lee said. So when you're drawing a crowd scene, you want to make sure it looks like, you go out in the street, you go to the mall, types of people that you see there, a little variety of America or wherever. But there is this definite push for diversity and quotas and this weird kind of thing. And the reason why that is it empowers people politically. That's hard to disagree with. When you say there should be more people of color or LGBTQ people in comics, it's hard to say there are plenty, buzz off, things are fine. There's no reason to enforce these initiatives and quotas. And then these same people who insist that there needs to be more of this or that say we're the ones to fix it, hire us. And so it's pretty transparent why this is happening. It's a power grab. It's also a political and social movement to change politics, to change who has the power in pop culture and in businesses. Why are they doing it with Superman specifically? Superman is more sinister. It's more pathetic. The reason why they're doing it with Superman is because every 10 years or so, DC Comics and Warner Brothers has to go fight the family of Jerome Siegel, who at this point took advantage of new laws to sue. There are laws out there now. There's a law that says, look, the clock is ticking on those of these big corporations that purchased invaluable IPs from lowly creators at sub-poverty wages 80 years ago, and these families are broke and these franchises are worth billions. The clock is ticking. You're going to have to let go of that.
2033 is Superman, I believe.
Well, that's the public domain. Okay, that's when it falls into the public domain. But before then, it's like the families are suing and saying, we're not getting a big enough piece and you're going to have to let go of this and that. They're in court all the time. Warner Brothers lawyers versus the family of Jerry Siegel to get pieces of Superman back so that they can live like they deserve to live.
Isn't that why they killed off Superboy for like a couple of years? Is like it had something to do with the lawsuit?
That is correct. That's why Superboy exists in the first place. They sit there and all right. So anyway, this DC Comics was really close to losing Superman, classic elements of Superman in court, the spit curl, the logo, the red boots, all of these things that, they were going to lose. Superman itself is just a word, Superman. Yeah. There are certain aspects of the Superman character that were trademarkable by DC Comics, and they were losing the trademarks on those to the Siegel family. So all of a sudden, what happens? Mysteriously, the New 52. And the New 52 happened entirely to shield this change to Superman so that they could hold on to the rights to Superman in the face of the Siegel family.
I wondered what happened.
Stuff. You notice there are 3 different new Superman books, and Superman is completely different in every single book. He's wearing jeans in one. I had to do a cover for one of the Superman books, Action Comics, and I drew him with the spit curl because I didn't know. DC kept us out of the loop about all of this. They edited the spit curl out. They actually removed the spit curl from my drawing because that was one aspect. The S-shaped spit curl had to go. The Siegel family got it back. Or they thought that they might, but Warner Brothers succeeded in crushing the Siegel family again in 2011. That was 10 years ago. What year is it now?
2021.
It's 10 years later. Now, Superman, as we know him, as the Siegel family is taking Warner Brothers back to court, is going off to another planet. We're not going to have Superman for a little while. We got his kid, Jonathan Kent, who is now gay. He's queer.
Thank you, Brian Michael Bendis.
This is a great way of hiding what they're doing. Just like the New 52, it's very subversive.
Jonathan Kent's gay?
They're going to announce that he's gay.
Okay.
So
they already did.
What a great way. And I broke this news. What a great way to hide DC Comics and Warner Brothers abusing the families of creative people and keeping them broke by hiding it behind a mask of virtue. Here's some more diversity for you. Superman is now gay. We're going to be in the New York Times. Aren't we progressive? While they have their feet on the neck of creative people who put them where they are. People, if my great-grandfather created Superman, I think he would want me to be a billionaire right now and live in the life because of his hard work. And these people are not wealthy. They are being abused by Warner Brothers. And all the while, we're supposed to go, very progressive, amazing, how awesome, Superman's gay. It's 2021. This is what's actually going on in this industry underneath this layer. It's like blue fucking velvet. You know, it looks wonderful. It looks blue collar. It looks, the grass is green, and right underneath the surface, maggots and worms and dirt. And it needs to be uncovered. It needs to be discovered. So this entire diversity initiative, this entire push, it's a great shield for corruption. It's a fantastic shield for corruption.
And that's the unfortunate thing when it comes to their diversity, is that it's done for entirely cynical and greedy reasons. It's not done because they actually believe it. It's done for the greed. It's done for cynicism, but it's also done, and I remember it was I keep forgetting his name. It's done for the applause. They want to get the coverage in the New York Times. They want to get covered in Washington, in the Wall Street Journal. It's kind of like what happened when, they reintroduced Kate Kane. That was 2011 too, wasn't it? I think it was 2011 when Kate Kane came back into the continuity. I think that was during the New 52 or right before. And this is like the first lesbian superheroine. And it's just like, okay, is it a good comic or not? Ultimately, it's just like, if they're, if they're lesbian, if they're different color, that's great. Are they effective at their job? Ultimately, that's all that matters, because that stuff is just should be part of who they are. It should not be their entire character. And I think a lot of times we see them do this diversity initiative of, okay, this is their entire character. This is why you should care about them. I'm like, I don't give a shit. If that's what they want to do, great. I care about if they're an effective hero, if it's well written. How's their rogues gallery? That's what I care about.
I wish I could sell more books by putting disabled Hispanic heroine on the cover. That would be great.
It doesn't sell. I mean, the whole thing is it doesn't sell. Nobody really cares. They care about good stories.
Yes.
Nobody really cares. The truth of the matter is that the color of your skin or your sexual preference has never really bonded anyone, any reader or any moviegoer, to any particular character. That is not the way human beings work. We're connected by our shared experiences and our empathy, not by our skin color and not by diversity and inclusion and all this bullshit.
I mean, is it cool to see people of color on screen? Yeah, but that's not my motivating factor. At least for me, that's not my motivating factor. I'm not speaking for all black people. But
look, it's fantastic.
I'm not speaking for all white people.
It's fantastic to see great black characters like Black Panther. Or Blade, or
John Stewart,
Falcon, or John Stewart, or
who DC removed from the Justice League because they said, "Oh, we have plans for Green Lantern," which I doubt it. But that's why he didn't show it. That's why it was Martian Manhunter and not John Stewart.
Hey, guys, real quick, we got a super chat here. Hail CC and Hail CG. That's from Jay Bama fan. But what I wanted to ask you guys is that there seems to be this concerted effort to appeal to social justice warriors as the audience for comic books. And we all know social justice warriors don't buy comic books. They're not the audience. And if there are SJW fans, it's a very small minority. So why do you think there's such a tectonic shift to try to appeal to that demographic that doesn't read comic books and exclude the people who do?
I think there's a couple of reasons for it. You guys talked a lot, so I'm going to go here for just a second.
Oh, no, there's go off. I'm going to shut
You are.
You do it. Go ahead.
I think there's a couple of reasons for it, but I'm going to give like an artistic reason for it. I'm a big fan of Shadowrun. I don't know if you guys know what Shadowrun is. It's a role-playing game. J.R.R. Tolkien makes cyberpunk is what it is, basically. And it came out in 1989. Fantastic game. Larry Elmore did the art in the books. Amazing game. I loved it. In 2004, I think 2005, a new company bought the rights to it because FASA went out of business, and someone took over it, and they created a whole new version of the game and pissed all over it. They ruined it, right? And the reason they ruined it is because they wanted people to look at Shadowrun and go, I made this. Rod, whatever his guy's name was, made this. And I feel like that's what these SJW creators are doing. They act like they're the first people to ever do this stuff. They act like they're the only person to ever write a comic book character of color, or a comic book character who was a woman, or a comic book character who, saved cats. It boggles my mind that they have no idea what the history is, not only of the comic book characters that they're writing, but the medium in general and storytelling as a whole. I mean, we have a rich storytelling history here in the West going back 10,000 years. And most of these people couldn't even say Gilgamesh, let alone have read it. And I think that's the huge problem is that they are so selfish and self-absorbed in their own little world of, oh, look at me, I'm a warrior for the right side of history, while I get rid of these old evil characters and write new ones with the same names because, Marvel chose me, so therefore I must be good. Anyways, that's my rant.
No, I completely agree with you. It's like they basically want to take, and it's kind of like what happened with Black Widow and some other stuff, where you hear these executives, these newly minted executives who have an agenda, who are crapping all over what came before. And I'm just like, if it wasn't for what came before, and it wasn't for all these problematic movies, you wouldn't have this. Black Widow wouldn't have had a movie, and it had not been for these problematic films that came before. So you're basically pissing on the foundation that got you to this point.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what are you doing? You have no idea what you're doing. You don't have any creativity at all. And it's just like, honestly, here's another thing. Don't piss off the fans. Don't insult the fans who basically came and watched these problematic films, because they're not going to come back if you keep insulting them. It's that simple.
Just some guy had this great take on this. Someone announced I think either Superman was gay, or one of the drastic changes they made this year to one of the characters. And he said like 100,000 people liked the tweet announcing it, and 10,000 people bought the comic. If everybody who liked the tweet bought the comic, then these comics would be selling through the roof. Instead, they're getting their butt kicked by manga and by Comicsgate. I mean, when God of War did what 500, not God of War, John Malin's comic, it did like $500,000 like in a couple of weeks, outselling every traditionally published comic book in North America. And he's an indie guy, he's Comicsgate. So how is that possible if these people are good writers? Because they're just not.
And it's also a question of the audience. Ethan, why do people keep trying to appeal to an audience that doesn't exist?
Because that isn't the point. It was never the point. These are communists. I know this sounds crazy. These are radical leftists who care about power and influence. This is all about politics. They don't care. It's not about, true diversity. That is a shield. That is a lie. Because it's very easy to call anybody who denies them at that point Nazis, to call them bigots, and get them out of the way. These people are seeking power and influence in high levels all over the place, in every hobby, everything that you love. They're there pretending to be virtuous, pretending to care, pretending to believe that the comics that you loved were bigoted or sexist in some way, so that they can install themselves and then bring in their friends and allies, and basically decide to use your hobby as a mouthpiece and a bullhorn to espouse socialism, communism. That is what this is. That's all it is. They're trying to change the culture. They're trying to, remember, politics downstream from culture. They're trying to affect the culture. And they see people like me as in the way, because I'm just here to tell stories. But I'm also a white heterosexual. Don't believe what these people tell you. Heterosexual male. I therefore am problematic, and I am not somebody who should be, making any choices. I should not be somebody who should be creative. Green Lantern Rebirth, comics like that, things that affected Jeffrey, his family, that doesn't matter. I am not going to bend the knee to these people. I see them for exactly who and what they were, and it took a long time for me to get here. But I understand what they're doing now. And you will too, because they will come for you. They will come for you. Cancel culture is a very real thing, and what they are about, what they're trying to do, devastating to our culture. Absolutely devastating.
But what gets me? What gets me is like at a certain point, Marvel and DC, they have to see the dip in sales the lack of revenue and be like, maybe we should change.
They don't care.
They don't care.
Well, they're going to start caring when they go out of business.
No, they're not going to go out of business because what $100 million Marvel makes annually to Disney?
They're not noticing the comics. The comics are now look, it's very convenient. I mean,
I wasn't talking about comics. I was talking about like the TVs and the movies.
Oh no,
they'll notice that eventually.
You'll see less of that as it goes along, but it doesn't matter. All of this stuff is about just preaching what these big corporations want you to believe about them. Do you think Coca-Cola cares about diversity and inclusion? Do you think Warner Brothers does? Do you think Disney does? They're quite happy to work with these activists to project this virtuous corporate image. It's all bullshit.
They're not. That's the thing. Most corporations, they do a lot of this outreach and a lot of this virtue signaling. It's not done to actually help people. It's done to help them. It's to make them look good. That's the only reason a lot of times, and it's a good tax write-off as well.
That's correct.
Small correction. John Mayallon's Godlike is at 200,000. I think it started off 50,000 pretty quick.
It was like 500,000. Whoa.
Yeah, no, it's at 200,000. Sorry, but $200,000. Yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, I would be so. I mean, if one of my books sold $200,000 worth of copies, I'd be through the moon. We'd fly to Las Vegas to pick up Charles for dinner.
So not me. Come on.
Well, you'd be there.
Oh, I'd be there. Okay.
Do you like frogs?
Real
can
quick.
You write frogs?
Yes, I can write frogs.
We can all write frogs. 52 movies a year says SJWs are a marketing shield for everyone that goes away. 2 more take their place.
They're hiring each other. It is getting weirder and weirder. And, the only thing to do really, we can complain about this all day long. You can say why it doesn't work. People don't like it. Well, you can say that, but it doesn't matter because it's not about that. These are not normal market forces that are at play here. You can't depend on the market. You can't depend on capitalism to fix this because it's not going to. So all you can really do is do what we're doing, and it's fun. And CC, you should join us. Why don't you come over here and write some comics? Jeffrey, come over here.
Done.
Write some comics.
I'll be down for that.
Yes, tell me what you want to write. I'm on it.
Let's talk because this is the only thing that we can do. The only thing that we can do is not complain because that's not going to change. We tried that. Comicsgate tried that for 2 years where we did nothing but point out how awful these comics were, and they called us bigots, and they spit on us. They ruined our reputations. They did everything that we could do. They called us a harassment campaign against women and trans and all this nonsense that's designed to just make people hate you and just silence you. So we stopped doing that for the most part, and instead we decided to create our own space. And create our own space where we could do business and create, actual stories and characters without any maybe there could be politics if you want, but they're not enforceable. There's no peer pressure. There's nobody saying, that you have to do this and you can't do this. And there's only one set of partisan politics that you're allowed to espouse or you're going to be ostracized by this community. The only people you're answerable to in Comicsgate are the customers, and that's the way it should be.
That's how indie authors is.
Do what they want.
Charles, being indie authors, that's how it is.
Yeah.
I mean, our gatekeeper is the audience.
I have a big question about Comicsgate, but first, DCBTXK asks, why aren't we talking about Cash Grab or Inglorious Rex, or even better, John Mayallon's Godlike? EVS may have a campaign or 3 or 2.
That's not what this is.
We're talking about bad writing. We're not talking about Comicsgate. But
Glorious Rex is awesome.
I actually have a big question for Ethan because I've been trying to get a comic book off the ground for a while, but my biggest stumbling block is I can't find an artist to work with because they're all either busy doing other projects or they just are unreliable. So if a writer out there wanted to create a comic book, what advice would you give them to help find an artist to collaborate with?
Well, I mean, here's the good news. It can be your turn to exploit a creative person because you have to. I mean, if you're a writer and you want to do a comic book, you have to find an artist, and thus you have to employ them. Yeah, I don't like to do this. CC, if we work together, we're going to work together in some capacity where you own part of what we do.
That's important to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like. I do this. Work for hire thing with colorists and letterers. Sometimes some short story guys I'll do work for hire, but for the most part, long-term creative collaborations, you should, from your position, do work for hire. Don't do some like we're sharing it 50-50. That will bite you in the ass later. You just don't have the power to enforce that or protect yourself. Save up some money. How long is your book going to be? Make sure you have $150 per page to pay somebody. And when you can say, I got $4,000 in the bank, I'm doing a comic book and I'm going to pay you, you can have any artist you want. People just want to get paid. These guys are workers. So you say, I'm looking for a good artist who wants to get paid $150 a page. Pencils, $50 a page. Inks, $200 a page to do a 20-page comic. They'll be lined up around the block. So it's just, you just have to invest money. You have to have money saved up, take out a loan, whatever it is. It's on you to be able to pay that guy. And then I'm telling you, there are artists who will work for you.
Where would you go to find the artists?
I mean, I'll help you. I just helped Eric July a little bit. He's starting a book now. He's got a big platform, so he put out the word. I gave him the same advice. Yeah,
Eric's great.
Eric is awesome, and he just said, "I got money. Who wants to work? I got money. Who wants to work for me?" And it's like he got a Marvel artist, so he's in good shape.
The funny thing is, and Cece knows this, and Matt does too. Authors have no idea. I'm special because my wife is an artist. But authors have no idea how much artists actually are worth. None.
This is true.
And so when authors always ask that question, I'm like, you are not going to get somebody to draw your comic book for $100, your 28-page comic book. That's not happening. And if it is, you're stealing from somebody.
You got to imagine what it would be like to need to pay the bills. I do, my pages take a long time to draw. They just do. But most people can do a page a day if they have to. So, you just say, what would I need if I were a person living in an apartment by myself? What would I need to be able to pay the bills so that I could draw 20 pages? And then you need to put yourself in that spot. Exactly. I'd say $150 is minimum. If you can come up with $300 per page, you're up in the stratosphere. Now you're getting DC and Marvel artists who will work for you.
The good ones, not the ones that trace over Daz.
Well, look, they're all good. They're all good. You can have your pick of them depending on what what your aesthetic is and what your taste is. But yeah, it's really pretty simple. You just put out the word that I've got money. I'm interested in paying an artist $150 to $300 a page, and they're like fish. They'll jump right into your boat.
Good to know.
That's good.
I wish people were like that with writers. Hey, I've got money. I will pay you a lot of money to write.
I'm like that.
Well, we need to talk.
Yeah,
all right, real quick. Reno says comic creators are taking cuts to their already low page rates. Exploit them. They can take it or starve. Also, never pay up front every 5 pages only.
That's important.
Don't exploit them.
No. You are exploiting them. There's just no. I mean, shame on them. They should be doing. If you at this point in your career, if you're a professional who is not now leaving Marvel and DC's corporate teat to go do your own thing and own it, that's on you. If you want to be a wage slave your entire life, that's on you. He's exactly right. Give them a fair wage, and then kick them to the curb when they're done. And that's just the way it is. They can go find another job. But he's right about every 5 pages. It's like, don't give them the money all up front. They got to do 5 pages, cut them a check immediately. Be quick about it. I use PayPal. It's the minute you turn in work for me, ask anyone. You get paid, and I pay better than anyone instantly.
My poor wife has to deal with everybody else's flaky artists because she's a professional and she has a very business mind, and so she's always turning her work in on time for authors when she does covers. And everybody's always like, "Wow, you actually turned in the work when you said you were going to." It's because so many artists don't. So that 5-page thing sounds absolutely legit.
Yeah, J Bama fan says altogether say hi Comicsgate.
I will. Hi Comicsgate.
Hi Comicsgate.
That's a whole thing. We had Donnie Cates appear on this show, and it was like 2,000 people were on a live stream, and I just said, "Why don't you say hi to Comicsgate?" And he wouldn't. He was afraid to. I mean, that's the thing. He was like, "Well, I'd say, well," it's like you just say hi. They're customers. It doesn't matter. If they were anti-Comicsgate, I would say hi to them. They're potential customers.
One of the things that I'm always telling authors who are up and coming, is that you have to know who your audience is.
Very
You have to
much.
know who you're writing the book for.
Mhm.
And Charles and I are blessed because we're part of that audience that we're writing for. People who
Yes.
love superheroes, who love the traditional superheroes. But so many people, when they write, they really don't know who they're writing for. And so it's hard for them to have any kind of coherent message, good or bad, or theme in their books. And so we see that a lot, I think, in a lot of the bad superhero movies, is they don't know who their audience is. And so they're sort of writing all over the place.
Or they're going for an audience that
doesn't exist.
Yeah, like Star Trek Discard.
Another IP that they're killing that is just ripping my heart out.
Just build your own.
Exactly.
I've got a deal with Ethan Books, and I'm editing the third book now. They're all 125,000 words, and it's basically my love letter to Star Trek. So yeah, I did my own, just like I did with superheroes. I did my own.
Yeah, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, and one of the great things, we're all kind of independent publishers on this panel, and one of the great things about the way things are going nowadays is that you don't need to be picked up by a big corporate publisher in order to get your stuff out there. You can create things independently. You can get them out on Amazon. You have lots of different distribution methods with which to get your work into the hands of fans. And I know Jeffrey, Charles, Ethan, and I have all built businesses around going directly to the customer and giving them what it is they want. I write science fiction. Jeffrey and Charles write superheroes. Ethan does comic books with frogs in them. It's crazy.
And human.
It's crazy the freedom and power that you get to experience when you're creating yourself. Oh, look at that.
That's so big.
Lord,
this is
that's awesome.
Ethan, you live the dream.
I know we did his fin broke off. My daughter was playing with this one of his. This is a freebie. Like if you backed my comic book, we made so much money that you're getting one of these for free, with the comic book, and then we just went ahead and we made his big brother Salamandroid as well.
Nice.
Which is, look at this tail on him. Isn't this crazy? And then today we haven't even launched this yet. We're doing toys with the comics because I really feel like kids. The tactile experience of playing with toys actually might lead them to being able to get into the comic books later on. But if here's a tactile experience. Here's the Heather Swain PVC that we just got in.
That's the human who's in the Cyberfrog.
That's Cyberfrog's best friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, these are things that just make comics more fun. We want to build a franchise and have everybody know about it. They hate this. SJWs are like, make frog books, make shitty frog books. People like Cyberfrog. I mean, people are really digging Cyberfrog. They're jealous. I mean, they're clearly very, very jealous.
And when something triggers, because Zach, your boy Zach, Richard Meyer, is doing a comic called Knife Hand Blind Spot. And he talked about it on his stream, and I immediately went and backed it because he talked about how G.I. Joe was his favorite comic growing up, which was one of mine. Me and him are about the same age. And he talked about this one specific issue with Snake Eyes, how this comic was basically his homage to that issue. And I immediately backed it because of that. And Cyberfrog's the same way. I mean, it's like you've got this people who are just hungry for these stories. They're just desperate for these stories. Clearly, if you look at your Indiegogo pages, clearly hungry for these stories.
Yeah.
And you guys are doing it.
Ethan, since I got you on here, I know that there are a lot of authors who are kind of watching this and they're wondering, I can't afford $150, $300 a page for an artist. So do you have any advice for crowdfunding for people who want to make a comic book or something like that? Like what would you tell people is important to do when trying to raise money to do these projects?
Well, I mean, it's like, it's like, well, I don't have any money, but I want a sailboat. I don't know what to tell you. It's like you might not get a sailboat. Save some money. If you can't afford to come up with $4,000 all at once for a 20-page book, and by the way, a book needs to be longer than that when you crowdfund it. Save up a little bit and get 5 pages that you can show. But I mean, really, for a writer, it's tough if you don't have an artist who's willing to come along with you. You need to hire someone, and you need to hire an artist, and that does take money. So I don't want to think of too many ways that you could get in trouble. I mean, you could save up $1,000, get 5 or 6 pages out of an artist, and then that artist doesn't finish it, and then your campaign fulfills, and that artist isn't willing to finish the book, and then you've defrauded your backers. It really is better to just, it's on you, I think, to figure out a way to save up that money for an artist, or just convince one to go in for a percentage of whatever you raise. And then that's tough too, because what if you don't raise very much? I don't know. I don't know. It's
Well, what have you found that fans really
risky.
respond to when doing a crowdfunded thing? Like, what are some of the bonuses that they really like to see? What is it you promise them that gets them to want to pledge?
I really think that, just like Stanley managed to do, creating a personal connection with an audience does so much more for selling anything. I mean, just anything than the quality of the product itself. I've seen great creators. Look at Sean Gordon Murphy. Just came out of the blue. I mean, this is one of the top Batman creators at DC. And he really thought, well, I'm gonna launch a campaign, and it's gonna make, I don't know, maybe $500,000, $700,000, $1 million. And he didn't do the legwork to actually connect with an audience. The thing that's deceptive is that you might just be popular because you're good at doing Batman. It might not be you. It might just be Batman after all. And so it is on you to develop a connection with your audience and find out what they respond to that you offer them, and then do that and stay in contact and connection with them throughout the whole process. It doesn't work for everybody, but I mean, it's worked for us. Comic skaters make sure that people know who we are as personalities. We let them know when we're going to launch a campaign and what it's going to be, and we keep them apprised of every step along the way. It's just I don't know. That's what I would recommend, first and foremost. And then if you have a boring idea, they'll let you know that too, and don't take that personally. Just kick it back to the drawing board. Try something new.
Yeah, building a strong fan community as a creator, I think, is the real key to success. So, guys, we've been going for almost 2 hours now. We're going to wrap things up. I'm going to go around, get everyone's final thoughts, and let everyone know where they can find out more about you. We'll start with the man with the great hair, Jeff Haskell himself. Jeff, where can they find you, and what are your final thoughts on Green Lantern and comic books and writing in general?
I'm going to take that in reverse order. I really wish that all these studios and Marvel, like I pitched at Marvel like 20 years ago when they were doing the Marvel Epic, and I pitched at Marvel last year to CB, whatever his name is. I can't think of his last name, how to say it right now. Sobolski. Sobolski. Yeah, and I pitched at him because I really thought he was going to come in and change things. But ultimately, what I really wish everybody would do is realize that, yes, you can make money making crap, and you can make money making good enough. But the real money, the money that lasts a long time, comes from making stuff that you love and people making stuff you love. So hire people who love these characters. Just hire people who love these characters. Pay them enough to stick around. Give them, 24 issues. When I was a kid, comics, you got to write on a comic for 3 to 5 years. There was none of this 6 issues and they were gone kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And for the love of gosh, stop rebooting every comic every 5 minutes. But having said that, I do hope they make Green Lantern again. I hope they do it right because I love Hal Jordan and the whole concept of Green Lantern, using your imagination to fight people. It's awesome. You can find me on Amazon.com if you like ebooks. I'm on Kindle Unlimited with all my books: The Full Metal Superhero, Arsenal, The Full Metal Superhero, and Wraith, Superhero by Night. If you like high-tech superheroes, super geniuses, then you'll love Arsenal. If you like Punisher, Batman, John Wick, you'll love The Wraith. One of my favorite things about The Wraith is people always ask me, like, what creative way are you going to kill people this time? Because she kills a lot of people. You can find my audiobooks wherever audiobooks are sold. Both series are done by Tantor Media. And sometime in the next year, I will have a epic military sci-fi series out called Grimm's War through Aethon Books, and that is my homage to Star Trek. and how I wish it would have been, when they started doing it again. So that's me.
It's great. Real quick, we got another one from Jay Bama. Stan Lee was half the man you are, EVS.
Oh, thanks. Wait a minute. It's a fat joke, you bastard.
Half the man. I get it. All right. Charles, why don't you tell everyone where they can find out more about you?
They can find out more about me. You can go to Amazon and to find my ebooks and my paperbacks for the Star Brigade series and the Pantheon Saga. You can also find my Pantheon Saga on Audible and any place, like most places where audiobooks are sold. And going back to what you said about about comics is, I think more often than not, just go back to what you just go back to the characters, giving people a reason to care about the characters, their struggles, their flaws. They don't need to be perfect. That's actually what draws people into them. Make them relatable, but make them not just relatable. It's not skin deep. It's not just skin deep or just what their gender is or what their sex is or who they love. What is internally? What drives them? What is their interest? Why are they fighting crime? What gets them into that costume? That's what people care about, because when they care about that, when they're invested, they'll go along on the ride with you. And I think that has gotten lost. And I feel that Green Lantern is an indictment of how not to make a superhero movie in so many ways. So.
All right. And last but not least, Ethan, what are your final thoughts on the Green Lantern movie, the state of comics in general, and let everyone know where they can find you and find out more about Comicsgate?
Well, the Green Lantern movie, its message should have been never give up. But I would like to say to those filmmakers that they should give up. Anyway, Comicsgate. I will say this. Thank you guys. There are a lot of Comicsgaters in the chat. Thank you. We fight an uphill battle. You get called names. Everybody wants to, denigrate you, but you're good people. You're good customers. And I think you're fighting for something that's literally virtuous instead of a scam and a hoax. That is what we're facing all the time. So I love my Cyberfrog readers. I love the people who subscribe to my channel, the people who have given me a better lifestyle than I had growing up in Merchantville, New Jersey. Look at all these toys I have because of you guys. Thank you so much. I want to thank you for that. You can find me on Twitter, Ethan Van Sciver, at Ethan Van Sciver. You can find my Indiegogo campaigns. I've got 3 of them right now going. I've got the Cyberfrog Blood Honey box. I've got the Cyberfrog action figure line, which is up right now. We just passed $500,000 on that campaign. And I've got Rainbow the Brute, which is at around $450,000 right now. It is, guys, what it is it's I'm taking girls' toy properties from the 1980s and I'm making them for men. So I'm ruining their shit, just like feminists have ruined ours. Anyway, that's Rainbow the Brute. I just want to thank everyone. I mean, honestly, thank you. We have so much fun, and we will continue to. See you around.
All right, guys, and I'm Matthew Kadish, and if you guys like this stream, be sure to subscribe to the Salty Nerd Podcast YouTube channel. We're also on Apple Podcast and Spotify and pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. We're a comedy show. We like to make fun of movies and TV shows and have a good time. I really appreciate you guys, especially all you who send us some super chats. That's always appreciated. And thank you all so much for tuning in. We do these bad writing podcasts or live streams every Thursday, and we always get great panels here to discuss various topics. I want to thank my distinguished panel of comic book aficionados, and now I'm pretty sure everyone's a Comicsgater at this point on the stream. But thank you all so much, and again, we will catch you next Thursday, and stay salty, my